This is Capturing Light, episode number 119 with Etienne Baussan.
Welcome to Capturing Light, a director of photographers podcast. Spotlighting cinematography tips, tools, and techniques. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. And now, your host, Gaddis.
Welcome to the Capturing Light podcast. I'm your host, Gaddis, and today we are talking with Etienne Baussan, a cinematographer that's very talented. We met a few years back at Masters in Motion. It was great conversation then, and it's great conversation when we did the podcast. So, without further ado, let's get right into the conversation with Etienne. All right, so I want to thank Etienne Baussan for coming on the Capturing Light podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Did I pronounce your name okay for the most part?
It was kind of trained to Baussan, but it was okay. Okay, cool. So you are based in France, correct? I am.
And how long have you been? How long have you been on your journey, with cinematography and in the film industry? How long have you been working at it?
So we're in 2020, great year.
Right.
It's been right. It's been like 7 years almost since I met with another DP, which by the way, Etienne, which was us when we had at the Masters in Motion in 2016. So we met each other in 2013, and I was just doing photography at the time. So he was kind of in the DSLR revolution thing. So he was doing videography with the 5D and still at the 70. And I was owning my own 5D at the time, doing photography stuff. So I just started to work with him, and he started to teach me how to use basically a DSLR to record video. So that's how it started like 7 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. So it was basically just learning from, a friend or someone that's already doing it. You didn't necessarily go to like a film school or anything for it.
No. I actually was a developer, like a coder. So I have like a previous life before photography and cinematography. Back in the days, Flash,
right.
The Flash thing was quite something. Yeah, you could program games and websites. So it was,
Do you still do any coding or not really?
Not really. I kept some stuff in the back of my head when I need to perform like some algorithm stuff or to perform like some specific tasks on the internet, like grabbing images from websites or stuff like that. Maybe we'll talk about that. It's like libraries of still images from movies, stuff like that. But no, I just completely erased that part of my life, and I just don't want to spend more time that I need in front of a computer. So
right. Well, and I was just about to ask, because you have like computer experience. Do you find yourself wanting to either edit or color certain things that you do, or do you try to stay away from that?
Oh, you're jumping right into the subject, right?
Yeah, trying to.
Yeah, no, it's a very important topic. So I've been editing, I think, like quite everybody. When you start on your own, you have to do kind of everything. Since you usually don't really work for production companies directly, you tend to find your own clients, which are around you, right? The one who surrounds you. So yeah, I've been editing, I've been coloring, I've been doing the sound, I've been doing a lot of stuff on my own. Not that I learned it on my own, but working with other people and trying to understand how it works, and then buying your own gear. And a lot of people went this road, so I did too. But nowadays no, I don't do it anymore. I don't do sound. I don't do editing. I don't do a lot of stuff. The only other area I work in is color grading.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, I I kept developing color grading skills like for years. I started quite late actually, because back in the days in 2013 when we were shooting the SLRs, we didn't have a lot of room to play with those DSLR footage that was quite compressed. So it was, very frustrating. And I remember we were all, crawling YouTube, finding a way to achieve that film look, and we were all
Mm-hmm.
like frustrated because we just simply couldn't. And our references were like movies shot on the first Alexas and Reds, and we're like, shit, how can I achieve like the film look with my DSLR? It was quite impossible at the time. So yeah, that's the skill I tried to develop during those years.
Mm-hmm.
I got accustomed with DaVinci Resolve, and now I can say that I've reached like a level where I can push myself on the projects where I work as a DP, and I can try to impose myself as the color grader. That's how you say that in English.
Mm-hmm.
As the colorist. So it depends on the project. Of course, if the scale of the project is big, we will have a dedicated person to do it, and the director and I will go to the dark room with the colorist, and that's better. But for like, I don't know, 80% of the projects that I do, I try to push for a colorist, and sometimes, and usually they don't have the budget for that, and they just don't budget for that because they're still in like the one man band
Mm-hmm.
videographer mindset. So you cannot say, hey, you have to spend another $1,500 or euros on post to just color the footage. They're like, what do you mean?
Right.
So to keep control over my images, I have to say it's part of the package, or it's just like a few $100 more, and I talk about that in advance, so that they're not surprised at the end of the project that they have to pay for that. So yeah, color grading is, I would say, quite a fundamental skill if you're a DP nowadays, because that's how you finish your images. That's what makes or break your images. So for me, it's really hard to just let that go and
Mm-hmm.
trust the client or the production company, because I know how it works. I've been editing, I've been working with editors, and I know that most of the time they don't have the budget, they don't have the time. So what happens is that the editor ends up doing the color in Lumetri Panel
Right.
in Adobe Premiere,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not their job. They don't
Right.
want to do it. They don't really know how to do it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have the time to do it, and your images just suffer from that. So
Right.
then that's what the world see, and I don't want to be frustrated anymore with that. I've been frustrated quite a lot with that problem. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I've developed skills on the color grading and trying to incorporate it in my package when I shoot.
Right. Well, and that's interesting that you say that you talk about that even, while you're, talking about budget and, just getting on the project, because I feel like in a lot of the projects that I've been a part of, it's always been like this, oh shit, we didn't think about color grading. We don't have a budget. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna, find someone, or so I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, that's such a smart way to tackle a frustrating thing that a lot of DPs go through when like they're like, okay, well, yeah, I'd love to be a part of the project, and then that's it, versus saying, yeah, I'd love to be a part of the project, and to keep the integrity of the look that we're trying to create, you know here is a recommendation of a colorist, or here's a fee that's built in to make sure that it gets from pre-production to post and color, and everything works together. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing that photography taught me. Because when you're in the photography business, there is I mean, there is no way that the photographer doesn't have a control over the images. I mean, they shoot, so they set up their light, they have assistants, there is a creative direction, the client is participating in all this. But when the shoot is over and you have like 1,000 images you have to pick up, I mean, there is no way that the client is going to pick one or two images and say, that's okay, let's just publish it. It's it's just the first 50% of that job that is done. Then you have to go to the post, and sometimes it's not a photographer who does that. You have like retouchers and finishers who does that, but the photographers works really closely with those people, right? So but those people know their job as well, so they will do like the whole package of retouching, that, you know, like skin softening and stuff like that. But there is no way like a raw photo would just end up in a commercial. And that's weird because in the video industry, and I wouldn't say past a certain limit, because when again you're working, I wouldn't on big commercial and stuff like that, this doesn't apply. But when you work a lot as a solo shooter, when you do like corporate stuff, documentaries and small commercials, this does apply. And you have to be able to explain to production companies or even to the director sometimes that your images are now crafted, the shoot is over, but now the post-production part, and I'm not talking about the editing, I'm talking really about the grading process. It's an integrated part of making the images and coming with well-crafted images and how to say that, like ended pictures,
like a finished,
not ended, but you know, yeah, exactly, like a finished product. So again, it depends on the area you're working on, but in this kind of field, sometimes they're like just, you know, shooting, editing, publishing, and like you said, they forget quite easily that that there is like an important step in between, and that step makes a huge difference on the images. And as a DP, it makes a huge difference on how your work is perceived.
Right. Awesome. So yeah, let's get into a project that you filmed. It's a documentary. I'll let you say the name of it so I don't butcher it because it's in French. So tell us a little bit about that documentary and how you got brought onto that project.
All right. So yeah, the documentary is called Opération Sourire. Was the French lesson of the day. You can translate it by Operation Smile. And the idea is that it was a documentary that we made with Doctors of the World here in France, which is called Médecins du Monde. And the idea of this project is to bring French surgeons and nurses to Madagascar, and help them perform surgeries over like 10 days to help young children who have problem to their mouth and their palate, their palates. You said it was, I forgot the name in English.
Cleft palate surgeries.
Exactly, cleft palate surgeries. So they do it for free for 10 days, and they just come there with the medical stuff and everything they need to, and they just perform surgeries. So we spent 10 days like a year ago in 2019 filming the surgeries and following different families, different subjects, different young children. And the idea was to build a small documentary about that. So the documentary, I think, like the 8-minute version, is not out yet. I think they delayed it for some reason, and there's an editor working on it. But we've been editing like three small docus, like 2 minutes documentaries, small documentaries, with specific topics. And the first one on my website is the one I want to talk about because it's following a girl named Esther. And the other two are more like corporate stuff, you know, following the doctors, interviews, stuff like that. So it's a bit less interesting. But the first one was more towards like that, the vibe we were looking for the long documentary. So that's the background of the project. And for this project, we went there with the person in charge of the video production,
Mm-hmm.
and me. It's basically like two people, and the other guy, who's called Nicholas, wasn't doing any video. It was more like a production coordinator and making sure that we grab the stuff they need to build the documentary. So it was me doing camera work and most of the time the sound as well, even if it was like pretty rudimentary. So I'm not claiming that I have like sound engineer skills, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just you're in the wild, you're running gunning, so you just do what you can, and it's not perfect most of the time, but you have to deal with it. Um, so yeah, sorry, it's a bit long, but
No, no,
I'll let
definitely.
you
What
questions if you
camera?
want to ask specific stuff.
Yeah, I got you. Camera package did you wind up taking with you?
I was shooting with my Ursa. It's a camera that I own.
Mm-hmm.
It's my personal camera, so that's the one I use the most when I'm not shooting like bigger stuff. When you can have like a dedicated camera package with dedicated lenses, so that's the one I took with me, especially because it's it, it's like it's a tough camera. People think it's fragile because it's black magic and I was, but they've made quite a long way since then.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Ursa Mini Pro, it's the 4.6K version, like from 3 years ago. It's battled to the ground. It's been everywhere with me, every situations, and that's a really great camera from the imagery standpoint, from the ergonomic standpoint, from everything. So that's the one I chose, and funnily, I use a lens quite often for this kind of stuff. For all the run and gun stuff, I use a regular Canon 17 to 55, uh, which is like the most basic lens you can find when you're starting out. Usually,
Mm-hmm.
people grab the Sigma like 18 to
To
35,
35. Mm-hmm.
but the range is quite limited. Yeah, even if I know the aperture is interesting, but the range is quite limited. So I went for the range instead of the aperture. But this lens is everything you need to. I mean, 17 to 55 on a Super 35 is great. It's stabilized. It's 2.8, so it was perfect for me. So that's what I chose.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. And I mean, as far as like because you're running and like getting things probably very quickly because for this documentary you can't necessarily just say, all right, we're going to do this 10 times. Like, I mean, was it basically just like your camera, your lens, tripod, some handheld
Right.
stuff, and that's basically it? Or were you doing were you trying to work with as much available light as possible, being that it was just you?
It's 99% natural light
Mm-hmm.
because we're in the wild most of the time. The 1% is from the interviews. Uh, First, we didn't want to record interviews. I tried to push that because I wanted to get out of this scheme of having the interviews on tape and then use it in the edit,
Mm-hmm.
which is which which is really the basic corporate stuff that you want to avoid now, especially when you want that poetic vibe, like variable vibe, and if you're recording the interview on tape, what you want is usually avoid static frame, and you want to come close to your subject using the easy rig or stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
we were not allowed to do that because they wanted to secure the testimonies in case they wanted to use it separately or whatever. So that's not an option we had. So we had to record those, and I grabbed with me two boa lights. I don't know if you know those. They're like LED lights, completely flexible and foldable.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and you have like magnets all along, so you
So
can
you can just
put
stick
them
it
on.
somewhere.
Exactly. I think I have somewhere on my phone pictures or two of the background. And when we were shooting in the hospital, we
Mm-hmm.
just used like, metal cases. We could just move around, and I put the bow on it, so I could just use those. But basically, it was just to raise the exposure a little bit on the faces, but nothing fancy.
Right.
And all the rest is shot natural light. So yeah, we were running and gunning all the time. You have to, even if you schedule your day, you don't know how it's going to be.
Right.
Someone who said yes the day before saying no at 1 minute before you interview, or 1 minute you want to go to their home.
Mm-hmm.
So you're running, gunning every day, and every hour. So I'm quite allergic to tripod.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's bad for me because you have to use a tripod, but I I quite never use a tripod. Sometimes I bring with me a monopod when I know that I have to record like 24p.
Mm-hmm.
But usually most of the time I shoot like 38, 46, or 50p. So it's all slow motion ish. And I'm a huge fan of handheld. So for Madagascar, I brought with me my Easy Rig, but in the end, it just stayed in the bag like for 90% of the time because I don't know. I just feel better when I grab the camera by the handle, and I feel free with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just use the Easy Rig when I was kind of tired. But that's the beauty with the Ursa. Even when you stick a V-lock on it, and your lens and a matte box and I don't know, a small HD on it, it's weighing nothing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
5 or 7 kilos, so it's like 13 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just fly it all day long. And I'm a skinny guy. I'm not like like a 250-pound guy.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone can do it. So yeah, that was the idea. Just keeping the camera at hand, flying everywhere we could, and just grabbing like the most because when you do documentary or running and stuff, you have to get quite a lot of material. So as a DP, it's always a battle, between quality and quantity. So
Mm-hmm. How do you balance that? Like, I know it's a battle, but it's just like, I mean, are you like really, thinking, okay, I have this kind of idea of where the documentary could go, so I'm gonna maybe focus on this particular surgery or this particular person versus, how do you, like kind of, I know it's a hard question to answer, but just that quality over quantity in documentary.
well, it depends on a lot of things, as you know. That's why the question is hard. But I would say even in run and gun situations, it's pre-planning. It's always pre-planning, pre-producing. It's the same. I apply always the same methodology on all the projects, even if it's run and gun and basic corporate stuff. I always ask the same questions, and I prepare the same way. So um, you always have a path in your mind of where you want to go, what kind of stuff you want to grab. So I did a lot of research beforehand online, grabbed a lot of references, watched a lot of small documentaries that were made in Africa, in Jamaica,
And where? I'm trying to follow you.
in Jamaica.
Oh, Jamaica. Yeah.
Jamaica, right? Okay, that's how
Yeah.
you say that in English. In French,
Mm-hmm.
it's Jamaica. So
I gotcha.
so yeah, I was watching a lot of those, and grabbed a lot of screen reference. I shared those with the production kind of the production manager for the project. We talked a lot, and I wanted, as a DP, you want to have a clear vision of where you are going with the person who's supposed to be kind of the director, because there is no director in this kind of project. You have just the person who's working in the production company or in the client. And in that case, I was a client. There wasn't a production company in between. So the person that was with me, Nicholas, he was part of Médecins du Monde. So they have a vision of what they want, but that's it. Then it's your job as a DP slash small director to come with ideas, to come with angles, and just say, hey, let's do this way and not this way. And that was part of the discussion we had about what we talked earlier about filming the interviews. When I brought this subject, I was like, no way, we're not filming the interviews. It's going to be sound voiceover only, and then we have images. We're like, no, we have to film the interview. So that's part of the discussion. And when you talk about that before shooting, you're envisioning the project. So once you're there, it becomes way easier to know what part of the documentary you're shooting and what part of the subject you're filming should be pure aesthetic or pure narrative. And sometimes you end up having both, and that's where, when you're golden, and I have no honor on the images that I've made in Madagascar, because if you have the chance to go someday in Madagascar or those kind of areas, it's completely crazy. I remember the day I arrived there, the camera was still in the bags, and we're just traveling in the car to the hotel, and it's like a 2.5 hours trip, and you're like, I wish I had the camera in hand right now, because everywhere I put my eyes on, it's just crazy beautiful. It's incredible. So you have nothing to do when you're outside. Just point the camera somewhere and do your job, like the basic stuff, framing. There's nothing else you can do. I mean, it's on a plate. It's on a plate before your eyes. So when this happens, you can focus on grabbing quantity, because the quality is already there. But if I had to create all these images, it would be quite impossible. You're not staying in one room that you can light. You're just moving constantly. So I mean, there is no secret. I mean, sometimes you have it with you, sometimes you don't. And what makes you a good DP, I would say, is those situations where you don't have it and you have to create it, and that's a whole different game. That's why there is like a big difference, with documentary, run and gun stuff, and control and narrative stuff, because I know I can do a lot with what's given to me, but that's really, really different from a narrative DP or a commercial DP, which he's facing a blank canvas and everyone's just staring at you like, okay, what are you gonna do? And it's sometimes it's very, very pressurizing.
Right.
So that's the main difference between the two, I would say.
Okay, cool. I know we're running close to time. I want to ask one technical question, and then a question that I normally ask all the DPs. But the technical question is, because you're Ursa Mini owner, is there like a certain thing that you do that you just really like, like pulling out the best out of the camera? You're like, okay, I love when, the camera shot at maybe this frame rate, or, I love using this lens or this filter. Is there anything technically that you could give, any Ursa Mini owners that they're like, oh, I never thought about that before?
It's really hard to foresee.
Because it depends on what you're shooting and the genre and all that stuff.
It does, but what I would say is this camera is made to be shot at 1600 ISO all the time. People are quite afraid of going above 800, and they're like, if I shoot 1600, it's just occasionally when I need no low light. Well, no. This camera has the best dynamic range, the best grain, the best image quality and texture at 1600, and just try try to put it at 1600 in like for one day. Shoot everything at 1600, and you'll see what comes out of it. It's another world.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because so many people, would say the opposite and say, okay, don't go to 1600, leave it at 800 because, in the past 1600 was either too noisy or, it just doesn't feel right. So, that's cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, because a lot of people, when they say that, they're referring to low light situations, and they're like, "Oh, the Ursa Mini is not a low light camera. If you go to 1600 and you have no light to film, it's gonna be grainy and you're gonna have noise pattern and stuff like that." And in a sense, that's true. It's like it's a $5,000 camera, so you just can't push negative as much as you could on an Alexa. And even that, I would moderate that because you can do a lot of things. But I mean, when you are at 1600, you're just remapping the whole ISO, the whole
Dynamic range. Mm-hmm.
Camera. Yeah. So even if it changed a lot, because I don't want to get too technical, but before we had the B-roll, you were shooting in ProRes or CDNG, but not a lot of people would do that.
Mm-hmm.
So you were shooting basically in ProRes, and while you're shooting in ProRes, what you shoot is what you have.
Right.
Now it's very different with the B-roll. So you could be shooting at ISO 400 because you have a lot of light in room, and in post you can decide to just jump at 1600 and crank down the exposure. And what happens is when you raise the ISO, you lose a bit of saturation. You're basically raising the grain, the noise of the camera. But the whole image is a lot less contrasty, a lot less, I would say, video-ish. So it's
Mm-hmm.
more organic. And that's why you should try that, because even if you have a lot of light, just put like a 2-stop ND and try to film at 1600, and you will see the image is really, really more, organic. There's no other word.
Right. Cool. Awesome. And one of the last questions I want to ask is, where do you find inspiration, and like, how do you stay inspired in your journey as a DP, as a cinematographer?
I could give you like a million answers to that question,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that would be the answers everyone give. So I'll try to be a bit creative. I had the chance to grab an access to a service called Shotdeck.
Oh,
It's a web service. I don't know, maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah. For still references.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's Lawrence Sher who talked about that in a podcast, because I think they built that thing for Joker. Yeah, right. So I asked to be able to have an access, and I did, and it's, I don't know if this thing is going public or not, but if it does, it could be a game changer, because it's good for inspiration, your own inspiration. It's good for pre-production
lookbooks.
Exactly, lookbooks and references you can give to clients, and just to speak. It's an awesome place. They have like 130,000 still images from like 1,500 movies, and they keep adding to the database.
Right.
And it's an awesome tool. So
yeah, no,
I would say
Shotdeck is really cool. I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but I was using it maybe 2 weeks ago, and I clicked one of the references, and it actually played some of the scene from the film. And I was
Really?
like, that is insane. That, like, I think I was referencing for a music video, and I pulled up Straight Outta Compton. And so I was looking at the still, and then I think at the upper right-hand corner or whatever, I just hit play, and it started playing some of the scene. And I was like, this is crazy. That's awesome. So I'm not sure if that's something that they're continuing to develop or not.
But was that from the whole movie, or was that
No. It was just like
link?
It basically, I don't know how they did the coding or whatever, because it was maybe like a minute of just that scene, and then it just stopped. So it doesn't play
Maybe
the whole
grab
movie or
some.
anything.
Yeah, maybe they're able to grab some featurettes or teasers or trailers from YouTube and just plug it in the interface or something. But that's very
Right.
clever. It's clever.
Yeah.
But I think this thing is going places because if you need, you need a two shot, you need a close up, you can give it like a lot of criterias, and then it just vomit images at you.
Right.
So it's yeah, I would say it's a tool that will stick around the industry for a while, and
Right.
we're all gonna use this thing for sure.
Hmm. That's awesome. And how can people find you online, and where can they keep up with what you're doing?
Well, regular places on Instagram. I have my website that I try to update once in a while, but mainly on Instagram. It's the best way to reach, the best way to ask questions or to share
And your
stuff.
Instagram handle is just your name?
It's just my name, yeah. So it could be quite complicated for foreigners. But my
Hmm.
name is Etienne, so it's Etienne,
Hmm.
and Baussan is Baussan. So
Awesome. And then your website is basically your full name.com, correct?
it is, yeah, it
It's
is.
super easy. You just
Yeah, once you know how to write it, it's super easy. But
right. Well, and I'll post it in the show notes so people can just click. They won't have to
all right,
do any typing. So at least
all
that'll
right.
save, you know, the people here in the US that may have a challenge, like typing
Yeah,
it or pronouncing it. Awesome. Well,
cool.
thanks so much for, giving some of your time. I know I've been asking for years trying to get you on the
Years,
podcast. Yes.
really? It's been years already.
Well, I mean, we met in 2016. So
Yeah,
I had my
it's
eye
true.
on you. I saw greatness and
Oh, come on. But
but
and by the way, at the time we met in 2016, you were the one who, because I remember the discussion we had at the Masters in Motion 2016. Because at that time I was really attracted by narrative stuff, and I wasn't like a formal DP, I would say, because
mhm,
Erwan was my DP, and I was more like a director, and I
mhm,
have a lot of things on the director side, but I've been like a DP professionally for the last like 3-4 years. But I remember when we met, the first discussion we had is you buying a screenplay and
mhm,
adapting it and making a feature. And,
right.
and I was like, wow, how did you do that? I want to know how did you do that? And I remember the discussions we had, and I was completely impressed. And still, I'm like, you have a feature under your belt, and that's why I want to see what you do. Because then I was so frustrated last night when I looked at the website, and I was like,
You're like,
fuck,
what's
I
going
can't
on?
play anything.
That's funny. Okay, well, we'll have to continue this conversation offline. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's just been, something that I've been kind of like just preaching and developing over time, telling people, hey, you can do it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to all the stuff that you're doing because, I mean, like looking at your Instagram, following your website, I mean, you have some great stuff. So I really appreciate you coming on the Capture Light podcast.
that was my pleasure.
If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thanks so much. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, wherever you may be listening to this podcast. I also want to remind you that I am putting out content on YouTube, so subscribe there. I just launched my vlog, which I'm super excited about. Um, there's time to, create content, and I figured why not do that. And speaking of creating content, I've been working on a community site for probably 7 months now, and I've been doing it on my own. And I figured I was talking to one of my really good friends on a mastermind call, and he was just saying, "Why haven't you launched this? Why haven't you launched this? It sounds amazing." And I was like, "Well, it's not really done. It's not perfect." and he challenged me to just launch it, and I accepted the challenge. So the community site is called Direct the Photography. It's where cinematographers come together and share basically everything that they're doing with lighting, with camera work, and it's really really cool. I'm super excited about it. There's one course there now. There's going to be different courses from different cinematographers, everything from additional podcasts that aren't necessarily included here. There's going to be watch parties, just a bunch of really cool content. There's an app that goes along with it. So April 1st, I'm going to be launching, but this will be a founder's launch, if you will. So there'll be certain benefits to launching with me and joining on April 1st. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. If you want more information, go to directthephotography.com. You can always hit me up on Instagram, send me an email. I'd love to chat with you. Yeah, and I'm super excited about it. We'll see, what this community grows into. I'm excited.
Thanks for listening to Capturing Light with Les Gaddis, a director of photographers podcast. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. A Gaddis Visuals production.